Under the humming fluorescence of Westbridge's oldest lecture hall, the sound that cracked the room open wasn't a shout. It was a single word, stop. A word spoken quietly, yet sharp enough to slice through Margaret Ellington's authority, like glass under pressure. Chairs creaked, pens froze mid-note. The air thinned as every head pivoted toward the man who wasn't supposed to speak, much less interrupt. Sam Harper stood near the back wall, one hand still gripping the handle of his supply cart, the other hovering inches above a trash bin he had been about to empty. His face was calm, almost too calm, but his eyes carried a look that unsettled even him, a look that said he had crossed a line he never meant to cross. Margaret stared at him, stunned, the chalk she held suspended in the air, trembling just slightly. Her voice finally rose brittle. "Excuse me." Sam swallowed hard. He hadn't meant for the word to escape. The correction had slipped from instinct, not intention. Years of silence had trained him to ignore mistakes from the sidelines. But not this one. Something in the equation on the board had triggered a reflex he'd forgotten he still had. He pointed gently, almost apologetically, toward the misaligned term. "Your boundary condition, it contradicts the earlier assumption. The result won't hold." A single cough broke the silence. Then a whisper. Another whisper. The students weren't mocking. They were confused, uneasy, intrigued. One girl leaned forward, squinting at the board. A young man in the front row lifted his glasses, checking the steps again, as if afraid the answer might leap off the chalkboard and chase him. Margaret's spine stiffened. "This is a graduate-level seminar." She didn't remember his name. She had never bothered. Harper Sam replied, "Sam Harper. Mr. Harper, this is not your place." Her voice had regained its steel, but her eyes betrayed the faintest flicker of doubt as she re-examined the chalk marks. She saw it then. The flaw. The flaw he had seen in seconds, while she had been lecturing with the confidence of a woman whose entire career had been built on precision. The chalk slipped from her fingers and clattered on the tray. A small sound, but in the dead-still room, it might as well have been a gunshot. That was when the door opened, and in walked Deputy Provost Daniel Whitmore, a man Margaret hadn't expected, a man whose presence changed the shape of the room instantly. He looked tired, the sort of tired that comes from phone calls at midnight and meetings that stretch into forever. His gaze swept the room and landed not on Margaret, but on Sam. Not because he recognized him, but because the tension in the air was unmistakable. "Is there an issue?" Whitmore asked, his voice level, but edged with something older, weariness, maybe even disappointment. The students looked at one another. No one spoke. Margaret inhaled sharply and turned her professional smile reforming like armor. "No issue," she said. "Just a disruption." Her tone carried a quiet reprimand, meant to crush the moment back into place. But Whitmore wasn't looking at her anymore. He was watching Sam, watching the way Sam stood, with humility, yes, but also with an intelligence that didn't quite fit the uniform he wore. "You're Sam Harper, correct?" Whitmore said suddenly. Margaret's head snapped toward him. "You know him. Facilities staff have been rotated recently," Whitmore replied, eyes still on Sam. "I reviewed the profiles myself. Profiling wasn't standard practice. Margaret knew that. And when she looked deeper into Whitmore's expression, she saw something she couldn't name. Not recognition exactly, but curiosity, even caution." Whitmore addressed Sam directly. "Do you understand the material on the board?" Sam hesitated. He felt the invisible weight of 100 judgments pressing against his ribs. He wasn't supposed to know any of this. He wasn't supposed to be seen. But Emily needed him to be brave in ways he hadn't been for years. "I think so," he answered softly. "I used to." He caught himself. No one needed to know what he used to be. Before the bills, before the diagnosis, before life carved him into someone smaller. "I'm sorry," he said quickly. "I didn't mean to interrupt." He reached for the handle of his cart, ready to leave, ready to erase himself. Then a voice stopped him. Quiet, shaky, unexpected. Wait. A student. A young woman in a burgundy sweater, her notebook half full of scribbles. "Professor Ellington, he's right." Her voice trembled, but her conviction didn't. The boundary condition fails if you keep the earlier assumption. He didn't disrupt anything. He helped. Murmurs rose again. This time the sound carried a different tone, not surprise but awakening. Margaret felt heat prickling beneath her collar. The room she controlled so effortlessly now felt like a stage lit too brightly, illuminating every crack in her composure. "That will be enough," she said sharply, but her voice didn't slice the way it usually did. Whitmore stepped forward, his arms loosely crossed. "I'd like to hear Mr. Harper finish his thought." The request, no. The command hung in the air. Sam froze. His pulse hammered behind his ribs. He wasn't supposed to stand at the center of anything. The last time he had spoken in a room like this, he'd worn a different life entirely. He looked down at his hands, rough from bleach and nights spent scrubbing tile. These hands had once held chalk. "It's nothing," he murmured. "I just noticed the inconsistency." Whitmore nodded slowly. Not everyone notices inconsistencies. His tone carried weight, the kind that hinted at buried knowledge. Sam felt himself shrinking, wanting to disappear into the floor, but Whitmore's next words pinned him in place. "Harper, report to my office tomorrow morning. There's something we need to discuss." The line sent a ripple of unease across the classroom. Margaret turned toward Whitmore with a brittle, practiced laugh. Daniel, really. Over an interruption. But Whitmore's gaze cut through her facade like wind through brittle leaves. "This isn't about an interruption." He turned back to Sam. "Tomorrow, 8 o'clock. And then he left as abruptly as he'd appeared. The door shut behind him with a soft thud. The tension didn't leave with him. It thickened. And in that thick silence, Margaret felt something she hadn't felt in years, fear. Because Daniel Whitmore never summoned a staff member without reason. And because the only person in the room who seemed to understand what had just happened was the man holding a trash bag and staring at the floor as if the world had split beneath him. The class dismissed itself slowly, as if unsure whether they were allowed to move. Margaret remained rooted, staring at the half-erased equation. Sam gathered his cart. He didn't look back. As the wheels rolled softly across the polished tile, one question echoed through the hall, unspoken, but heavy enough to follow him out the door. Who exactly is Samuel Harper? Sam barely slept. Every time he closed his eyes, the memory of the lecture hall replayed Margaret's frozen stare, the murmuring students, Deputy Provost Whitmore's unexpected command. By 5 a.m, he stopped trying. The apartment was still dark, the kind of darkness that clings to corners even after you turn on the lamp. Emily slept peacefully in the next room, her breathing soft and steady, the faint mechanical hiss of the humidifier masking the weak flutter of her heart. Sam stood in the doorway, watching her grounding himself. No matter what waited for him at 8 o'clock, this was the only reason he needed to walk into Whitmore's office instead of calling out sick. He showered, dressed in his cleanest uniform, and left the apartment with a knot in his chest he couldn't explain. The sun had barely begun to lift over the Westbridge campus when he arrived. The old stone buildings looked almost gentle in the early light. Their edges softened their shadows long. Students hurried past him with coffee cups and backpacks, offering polite nods, the kind people give without really seeing who they're nodding to. Sam didn't mind. Being invisible had become a kind of safety. At 7:55, he stood in front of Whitmore's office. The door was closed. Through the frosted glass, he saw only shapes, the moving silhouette of someone pacing the shifting shadows of someone else seated. He inhaled sharply and knocked. "Come in," Whitmore called, his voice steady. Sam stepped inside and found not one person waiting, but two. Deputy Provost Daniel Whitmore stood near the window suit jacket draped over the back of his chair. Sleeves rolled to his elbows like a man wrestling with a long night. Across from him sat another figure, lean, stern-faced, mid-60s hair silver and combed tight. He wore a navy blazer and an expression that suggested he had already formed an opinion about Sam before Sam opened the door. Sam recognized him immediately. Professor Ronald Pierce, senior faculty, former head of the mathematics department. A man known for three things: brilliance, tradition, and zero patience for incompetence. Whitmore motioned for Sam to sit. "Mr. Harper, thank you for coming." Sam sat carefully, fighting the instinct to keep his hands folded out of habit. He didn't know what this meeting was about, but Pierce's presence made one truth clear. This wasn't about a classroom disruption. Margaret had spoken to someone, or someone had spoken to her. Something was moving behind the scenes. Whitmore leaned back against his desk. What happened yesterday was unusual. Pierce interrupted his voice, cold and clipped. Unusual is a generous word. A member of the custodial staff correcting a graduate seminar in the middle of instruction, Whitmore held up a hand before Pierce could continue. "Let's not begin with assumptions." Sam felt heat rise along the back of his neck. He didn't know what to say, whether to apologize or defend himself. Pierce studied him with narrow eyes. "How long have you been with Westbridge Facilities?" "Almost 10 years, Sam answered quietly. Pierce nodded slowly, as if confirming a suspicion. "And your academic background?" Sam hesitated. Whitmore noticed. "Mr. Harper." Whitmore said gently, "We're not here to evaluate your job performance. We're trying to understand what happened yesterday." Sam cleared his throat. "I took some graduate courses years ago. I didn't finish the program." Where Pierce asked. "University of Michigan." Pierce's eyebrow lifted, barely perceptible. "And you left because..." "Personal reasons," Sam said, wishing the words didn't sound like a lie. Pierce exchanged a look with Whitmore, a look that wasn't hostile, but calculating like two men assembling a puzzle without the final piece. Whitmore walked around the desk and sat opposite Sam, lowering his voice. "I reviewed the classroom footage." Sam stiffened. Westbridge policy allowed recording for accessibility accommodations, but he hadn't realized the seminar room had cameras. "You didn't just notice an inconsistency," Whitmore continued. "You read the board as if the material were familiar, as if you had done this before." Sam felt the room tilt. He hadn't realized how transparent he had been. "Is that a problem?" he asked. The second the words left his mouth, he regretted them. Pierce's expression tightened. "It could be depending on why you were in that classroom." Sam blinked. "I was emptying trash." "No," Pierce said sharply. "You stopped. You stayed. You made observations unrelated to your duties." Sam opened his mouth to respond, but Whitmore cut in. "Ronald." His tone held quiet authority. "Let me handle this." Pierce exhaled sharply and leaned back. Sam glanced between the two men. "If this is about me interrupting, I'm sorry. It won't happen again." Whitmore studied him for a long moment, then shook his head slowly. "This isn't about reprimand." He reached to his desk and lifted a thin folder. "Light. Too light. We ran a standard internal review last night to confirm your employment records. There it was. The thing Sam feared more than any reprimand. The folder Whitmore held didn't contain the truth, because the truth wasn't there. Michigan had closed his academic file when he withdrew. The last year of his life there, the research, the half-finished dissertation, none of it appeared on transcripts. He had vanished, academically speaking. "Is there a problem with my paperwork?" Sam asked carefully. "Not exactly," Whitmore said. "Your employment file is clean. Your academic history is thin. Gaps, inconsistencies." Pierce leaned forward, voice low and pointed. "Most custodial staff don't walk into a seminar and identify mathematical boundary failures that senior faculty miss." The room fell into a heavy silence. Sam felt the instinct to retreat, to shrink, to apologize, to disappear before anyone saw past the uniform. Whitmore broke the silence first. "I want to offer you something, Mr. Harper." Sam froze. Offers from deputy provosts didn't exist in his world. Whitmore continued, choosing each word with precision. "The university has an independent assessment process for non-traditional students, adults who left academic programs for reasons beyond their control." Sam's breath stilled. Pierce watched him closely, searching for something. "If you pass, Whitmore said you'd qualify for reinstatement into a degree track. Financial aid, institutional support," Pierce added reluctantly, "and you would do so legitimately, without special treatment." Sam felt suddenly weightless and terrified. Emily's face flashed through his mind, her worn, stuffed bear, her pale cheeks, her quiet resilience. He knew what a degree meant, what a return meant, what a second chance meant. But chances came with costs. "I have a job," Sam whispered. "A daughter." "You wouldn't have to decide today," Whitmore said gently. "The assessment is optional, confidential." Pierce spoke again, softer this time. "Talent doesn't disappear, Mr. Harper. It gets buried. Sometimes by life, sometimes by circumstance. But it doesn't disappear." Sam didn't know how to respond to kindness packaged inside such sharp truth. Whitmore closed the folder and set it aside. "Take the day. Think about it." Sam nodded, though the room felt distant, as if he were hearing everything from underwater. As he stood to leave, Whitmore added, Sam paused. "There is one more thing," Whitmore said. "Professor Ellington has filed a note requesting that you no longer enter her classrooms during lectures." Sam felt the words hit harder than they should have. Not because he wanted to be in her classroom, but because it confirmed something darker. Margaret wasn't simply shaken. She was threatened. Whitmore's gaze softened. "We'll address it." Sam left the office with his heart pounding, the hallway seeming too narrow, too bright. Outside, the early morning sun had risen fully over campus. The world looked unchanged, but everything had shifted. Behind him, inside that office, 2 administrators had seen something he tried for years to bury. Ahead of him, down the long stone walkway, was a life he thought he had lost. And somewhere across campus, a woman who once ruled her classroom now feared a man who carried a mop. Sam walked toward the custodial building, with one question echoing louder than all the rest. If he said yes to Whitmore's offer, what parts of his past would he have to face again? The knock came just as Sam placed his lunchbox in the staff room fridge. 3 slow taps, not urgent, but heavy enough to make the fluorescent lights overhead seem colder. He turned, expecting another custodian, asking to swap routes or borrow gloves. Instead, Lisa Moreno, the day shift supervisor, stood in the doorway. Her face carried the tight, polite smile of someone delivering news she didn't want to deliver. "Sam," she said softly, "they want you in Ellington Hall." His chest tightened. Now she nodded. "Room 312. She asked for you specifically." A pause. And Sam, she didn't sound angry, just shaken. Shaken wasn't better. Shaken meant unpredictable, and unpredictable people had the power to ruin his job with a single complaint. Emily couldn't afford a father without health insurance. He swallowed hard. "I'll go." The hallway leading to Ellington Hall buzzed with late-morning energy. Students rushed between classes, some arguing about last night's basketball game, others comparing notes and anxieties. But Sam noticed something new. A shift in the air, a scattering of glances that lingered on him longer than usual. A few students whispered. One even lifted a phone before quickly lowering it, embarrassed or hesitant. The clip. Someone posted the damn lecture clip. His palms went damp. He didn't know what the video showed, just him pointing out an equation, or Margaret's reaction, or Whitmore stepping in like something had cracked wider than anyone realized. He pushed the thought aside and kept walking. Room 312's door was ajar. The thick wooden frame carried a brass plaque, Professor Margaret Ellington, Department of Mathematics. The office was spacious, lined with bookshelves, sunlight pouring across a large desk stacked with papers. Margaret stood near the far wall, staring at a chalkboard filled with equations, but her hand wasn't moving. She was frozen, shoulders rigid, as if the numbers themselves had turned on her. She didn't turn when Sam entered. "Close the door," she said. Her voice was still sharp, but the edges trembled. He did. Margaret finally faced him. Something in her eyes startled him. Not anger, not superiority. Something closer to humiliation, but covered by a brittle layer of pride. "Mr. Harper," she began slowly, "I don't appreciate being made a spectacle." Sam blinked. I know you didn't," she cut in quieter now. She stepped closer, arms crossed, clutching her elbow with the opposite hand. "But students talk, and apparently talk travels." Very quickly, he said nothing. There was nothing safe to say. Margaret's gaze dropped to the floor, an uncharacteristic gesture. "I spent last night reviewing the lecture recording." The breath in Sam's lungs froze. She continued, "I was looking for proof that you were wrong, or that I had misread the board." Her eyes lifted, meeting his, with an honesty that felt like a crack opening. "You weren't wrong." Silence stretched and stretched. Sam shifted, uncomfortable with the intensity in her stare. "It wasn't meant to embarrass you," he murmured. "You just made a mistake," she finished sharply. Then softer. "And you saw it before I did." She stepped back, creating a formal distance between them once more. "I submitted a request this morning," she continued, "to have custodial services rerouted away from my classroom during teaching hours. It wasn't personal. I merely wanted to avoid disruption." He nodded. "I understand." "Do you—" There was a bite in her tone again. "Do you understand the position I'm in? One moment of miscalculation, and suddenly my authority, the foundation of every lecture I give, is under scrutiny." Sam's jaw tightened. From one correction, from the wrong person making it. She whispered. The words lingered heavy and unguarded. She realized how it sounded only after it escaped. Her expression faltered. "I didn't mean—" "Yes," Sam said, cutting her off gently. "You did." Margaret's mouth parted, but she didn't defend herself. Instead, She walked to the chalkboard and placed a hand flat against the cool surface, eyes far away. "Do you know," she said slowly, "that for 30 years I have never had a student never catch me in a mathematical error during a lecture?" Sam exhaled a quiet breath of disbelief. 30 years. I was 18 when I solved my first research problem, 25 when I finished my doctorate. I've built my identity on precision. Her fingers curled slightly. And now half the department believes I've lost my edge because a custodian corrected me. Sam felt something shift inside him. Not pity, understanding. Being underestimated was familiar territory. Being doubted was a different wound entirely. She wasn't asking for sympathy. She was trying to navigate a bruise to her professional core. Still, he kept his voice steady. "I'm not your enemy, Professor." A humorless breath escaped her, almost a laugh, but too fragile to be one. "No, you're not, but you are an unknown variable." The phrase hung between them with more meaning than she intended. Before Sam could respond, something else caught Margaret's attention, a folder on her desk, thick with printed screenshots. She hesitated, then handed one to him. Sam stared. It was a still frame from the lecture hall recording. Him, standing with his hand raised slightly, pointing at the error, every eye in the room fixed on him like they had just witnessed a stranger speaking a forgotten language. "The clip has over 30,000 views," Margaret said quietly. "Posted an hour ago." 30,000 wasn't viral by national standards, but for an academic community, it was an earthquake. His stomach turned. "This wasn't supposed to happen. You think I wanted it?" Margaret snapped, then caught herself. She softened again. "Mr. Harper, Sam, do you understand what this could mean for you?" The question stunned him. "For me, you corrected a graduate lecture. And people noticed. People who matter." Her voice lowered. "People who will wonder who you are." Sam felt something cold slip down his spine. His past wasn't a door he wanted reopened, especially not by strangers digging through search engines and old academic archives, especially not now when Emily's medical future hung by a thread. Margaret stepped closer, studying him, as if trying to assemble a puzzle. "Where did you learn mathematics like that?" He swallowed. "Before." She waited. When he offered nothing more, disappointment flickered across her face, not unkind, just human. "If you choose to stay invisible," she said, "that window won't stay open long." He looked up sharply. "Window," she nodded. "Opportunities don't wait, especially not here." They stared at each other, neither willing to be the first to look away. Then a knock shattered the moment. A young teaching assistant poked her head in, breathless. "Professor Ellington Dean Reinhardt needs you in the main office. Something urgent about last night's recording." Margaret's eyes widened, just slightly, but enough. Trouble. Real trouble. She glanced at Sam, something unspoken passing between them. A warning? A plea? A promise? He couldn't name it. She turned to the assistant. "Tell the dean I'll be there in 5 minutes." The door closed. Margaret looked back at Sam, breath unsteady. "No matter what anyone asks," she said quietly, "no one needs to know more about you than you choose to tell." A chill rippled through him. "What do you mean?" Her eyes softened, tinged with something new, respect, fear, and something else he couldn't read. "Because whatever you were before all this, it wasn't ordinary." She stepped away, gathering her papers. "And I don't think you want the university discovering it on their own." The implication struck like a blow. She moved past him toward the door, pausing just long enough to add one final truth. "Be careful, Sam." This place devours brilliant people faster than it celebrates them. Then she was gone, footsteps echoing down the hall, leaving Sam alone in her silent office, staring at his own face, frozen on a printed screenshot, wondering how long he could keep a past he buried from clawing its way back to the surface. Sam didn't remember walking out of Ellington Hall. One moment he stood in Margaret's office, surrounded by chalk dust and tension, and the next he was outside, in the cold December air, the breath punched from his lungs, by a truth he didn't want to face. 30,000 views. A viral clip. People wondering who he was. People digging. He had spent nearly a decade surviving by being invisible. Now he stood under the brittle winter sun, feeling exposed, as if the whole campus had turned toward him, with questions he couldn't afford to answer. His phone buzzed. A number he didn't recognize. He ignored it. Then it buzzed again. Another unknown number. He silenced the phone and headed toward the facilities building. But halfway down the path he stopped. A man was leaning against the side of the old science library, arms crossed, watching him with an unwavering intensity that made Sam's stomach turn. The man stepped forward, tall, lean, black overcoat, grey at the temples, his posture too straight for academia. "Mr. Harper," he said, not asking but asserting. Sam's pulse thudded. "Do I know you?" "Not yet." The man's voice was calm, controlled, the kind used by people who never wasted words. "My name is Charles Donnelly. I represent the Office of Institutional Compliance." Sam stiffened. That department handled legal matters, student conduct, faculty ethics, nothing that ever touched custodial staff. Donnelly reached into his coat and pulled out a sleek black folder. "I'd like a moment of your time." Sam glanced around. Students passed without paying attention. Life continued as normal, but something in the air felt wrong, like pressure building before a storm breaks. "I'm on shift," Sam said. "This will only take a few minutes." Donnelly opened the folder. Inside were printed screenshots, stills from the viral clip. Sam standing. Sam speaking. The chalkboard behind him. Donnelly tapped a page. "You understand the attention this incident has generated?" Sam said nothing. "Our concern," Donnelly continued, "is ensuring that no university policies were violated." "I corrected an equation," Sam said quietly. "That's all." Donnelly's eyes sharpened. "And how did you come to understand that equation?" Sam felt the trap tightening. "Anyone can learn," he said. "Mathematics isn't restricted to faculty." Donnelly's lips curved not into a smile, but into a small, almost disappointed line. "That's not what I mean. You possess knowledge beyond your recorded academic history. That discrepancy is unusual." Sam looked away. "It's not illegal to learn on your own," True Donnelly said, "but it raises questions about your intentions, about whether you inserted yourself into a classroom for reasons that fall outside your employment role." The word struck like cold water. "I was working," Sam said sharply, "emptying trash. I didn't insert anything." Donnelly closed the folder with a soft snap. "Mr. Harper, let me be candid. When individuals suddenly attract attention in ways that affect the university's reputation, we are obligated to verify their background." Sam felt something icy twist in his chest. "My background isn't a threat." "Are you sure?" Donnelly asked softly. The question hung in the thin winter air like a blade. For a breath, just one, Sam wondered if this man somehow knew the truth he hadn't spoken aloud in years, the truth he couldn't afford to have surface. Donnelly's phone buzzed. He checked it, eyes narrowing slightly. Then he reached into his coat again, pulling out a small white card. "This is my number. If anything else occurs, any additional incidents, attention, inquiries, You will contact me immediately." Sam didn't take the card. He didn't trust himself to move. Donnelly placed it into the front pocket of Sam's uniform shirt, as if Sam had agreed. And Mr. Harper Donnelly added, stepping back, "Be careful who you speak to on this campus. You've attracted interest from several directions." What direction Sam asked, but the man was already walking away, his long strides, deliberate, confident, like someone accustomed to leaving questions unanswered. Sam breathed out, shaky, trying to ground himself, but before he could take 2 steps, a voice called his name from behind. "Sam!" He turned sharply. It was the teaching assistant from earlier, Maya Benton, mid-20s, bright eyes, hair tied in a loose knot. She looked apologetic even before she reached him. "I'm sorry," she said. "I didn't mean to startle you." Sam forced a steady breath. "It's okay." Maya hesitated, biting her lip. "I wanted to talk to you about yesterday, and about something I heard this morning." Sam stiffened again. "What something?" Maya glanced around, lowering her voice. "There's talk in the faculty lounge. Some professors want a formal inquiry. They think you were fed the answer." Sam's stomach dropped. "Fed the answer, or coached, or that you staged the correction." Her voice faltered at the absurdity. "They're trying to blame you for their embarrassment." Sam's jaw locked. "That makes no sense." "I know," she said quickly. "I told them that. But there's a rumor that someone, maybe a former faculty member or an outside tutor, used you to make Ellington look bad." Sam blinked in disbelief. "Why would anyone do that?" Maya shook her head. "Politics, I guess. This department runs on ego more than chalk." She took a small breath. "I just wanted you to know what's stirring." Sam looked away, a bitter taste rising in his mouth. "Thanks." But Maya didn't leave. She watched him with an expression he recognized concern mixed with curiosity. Not the invasive kind. The human kind. "Sam," she said gently, "you weren't just right about the equation. You saw it instantly. That's not normal." He felt the old instinct return, the one that told him to shut the door on every question. He forced a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Just a lucky moment. "I don't believe that." Her voice held no accusation, only truth. "And neither do the people talking about you." She took a step back, but didn't turn away. "Please be careful. This place goes after anyone who threatens the hierarchy. And right now, you're a threat to people who've never been questioned before." Then she left him standing alone, with the cold air biting at his skin. Sam finally moved, walking toward the custodial building in slow, measured steps, trying to quiet the roar in his head. Inquiry, compliance office, faculty gossip, viral attention. It was spiraling faster than he could control, faster than he could protect Emily from. As he reached the maintenance hallway, his supervisor stepped out, clipboard in hand. "Harper phone call for you. Urgent." His breath caught. "Who is it?" The supervisor hesitated. "Someone from the medical billing office at St. Augusta Hospital." Sam's heart slammed against his ribs. "Emily." Something about Emily. He rushed inside, grabbed the receiver, and pressed it to his ear. "This is Sam." A woman's voice, clinical but gentle, answered. "Mr. Harper, this is Helen from St. Augusta. We've run into an urgent issue regarding Emily's next evaluation." Sam closed his eyes, bracing. "What issue?" "Your insurance," she said. "There's been a lapse." The room spun. "That's impossible. I've been paying every month." "We know," she said. "But the university flagged your file this morning. Something triggered a temporary hold on your coverage." Her next words cut through him like ice. "Until the matter is resolved, We can't schedule Emily's tests. I'm very sorry." The line buzzed in his ear, distant and hollow. Sam couldn't move, couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. And as the silence deepened, a single realization rose through him like a gathering storm. Whatever was happening at Westbridge, whatever spotlight he had stepped into, it wasn't just threatening him anymore, it was threatening his daughter's life. Sam didn't remember hanging up the phone. One moment, he was gripping the receiver so tightly, his knuckles blanched, and the next, he was standing motionless in the maintenance hallway, the dial tone humming against his ear like a distant alarm. A lapse in insurance, a hold on coverage, no tests for Emily. His mind fought to make sense of it, but the panic rose too fast, too sharp, tightening around his chest until he could barely pull in a full breath. Someone must have flagged his file. Someone with access. Someone who had been in the building early enough to act before the sun was even up. Donnelly Finance Compliance. Margaret, no, not Margaret. She was rattled defensive, but not cruel. She fought to protect her reputation, not endanger a child's life. Sam lowered the phone slowly. The hallway around him blurred. He needed air. He stepped outside into the brittle cold, letting the wind hit him full in the face. His breath formed shaky clouds. For a moment, he simply stood there, fingers trembling until the dizziness eased. Emily came first. She always had. He pulled his phone from his pocket, scrolled to the hospital's main line and dialed. The call went straight to a waiting queue. He paced. Each ring was a countdown he couldn't afford. At last, a voice answered. St. Augusta Medical Center. How may I direct your call, Billing? Please. His voice cracked. A pause. Then another voice. Billing Department. This is Carla. My daughter's appointment was put on hold, Sam muttered. Her name is Emily Harper. They said my insurance was flagged, that there's a lapse. I need to know who did that. Papers rustled. Keyboard clicking. All I can see is that the hold came through electronically from your insurance provider. Today at 8:17 in the morning. 8:17, Sam repeated. That was moments after he'd left Whitmore's office. But why? The note only says, pending internal verification with employer. Sam closed his eyes. Can I pay out of pocket for the evaluation, he asked, already bracing. Unfortunately, no, she said gently. Hospital policy requires active insurance authorization for cardiac, pediatric diagnostics. I'm sorry. He thanked her and ended the call, though the words felt hollow. A hold could last hours, or days, or weeks. Emily didn't have weeks. He had one thought left. Whitmore. Only he had been in a position to trigger a verification check after their meeting. But would he do it himself, or had someone in HR, prompted by his inquiry, reviewed the employment file and thrown up red flags? Sam didn't know, and speculation wasn't going to help. He needed answers, not fear. He headed across campus toward the administrative quad. Students swirled around him, laughing, arguing, rushing to class. The normalcy of their lives felt unreal, like he'd slipped into a world he no longer belonged to. When he reached Whitmore's building, the lobby receptionist looked up. Good morning, she chirped. Do you have an appointment? I need to speak with Deputy Provost Whitmore. He's in a meeting. It's urgent. She hesitated, seeing something in his face. She picked up the phone. One moment, he heard her murmur quietly, then nod. He'll see you. 3rd floor. Sam climbed the stairs, 2 at a time. When he reached Whitmore's office, the door was already open. Whitmore sat behind his desk, glasses, low on his nose, reading a thick packet of documents. When he looked up, his expression shifted instantly. Concern. And something else. calculation. "Sam," he said, "I didn't expect you back so soon. My insurance was frozen," Sam said, without preamble. "St. Augusta just called me. They said the university put a hold on my coverage this morning." Whitmore straightened. "A hold? Why would he stopped?" His jaw tightened. He knew exactly why. "It's because of the situation yesterday," Sam said, voice low, trembling. "Isn't it?" Whitmore folded his hands, thinking, "Let's take this one step at a time." "My daughter needs tests," Sam said. The words came out raw. "She needs them to determine if she qualifies for the next procedure. If there's a delay, Sam, I need my insurance reinstated. Today. Not tomorrow. Not next week." Whitmore removed his glasses, set them on the desk. "I didn't initiate the hold," he said slowly. "But HR may have acted automatically when I requested a deeper review of your credentials. It's standard procedure." "Standard procedure," Sam repeated, disbelief rising like heat. "You froze my daughter's medical access because of a boundary condition correction." Whitmore winced. "The university isn't targeting you. It's targeting liability. If you're applying for academic reinstatement, your employment records must be cross-verified. Until they're verified, some benefits." Pause temporarily. "Emily doesn't have time for temporary." Sam's voice dropped to a whisper. "Please." Something flickered across Whitmore's face. Guilt, maybe, or recognition of the line he'd crossed without meaning to. "I'll contact HR immediately," he said. "I'll push through the verification manually. You'll have your coverage back by this afternoon." But Sam heard something in his tone. Something uncertain. Something that said he wasn't entirely sure he could deliver. "What if they don't reinstate it?" Sam asked. Whitmore exhaled slowly. "Then we escalate. But let me handle the first step." Sam nodded, though his stomach still churned. As he turned to go, Whitmore added softly, "There's something you should know. Compliance forwarded me a message this morning. You've drawn interest from outside the department." The words tightened the muscles in Sam's neck. "Outside individuals watching the clip," Whitmore said. "People who think your correction wasn't luck." Sam's breath caught. "What kind of individuals?" "Not students," Whitmore said. "Not faculty." The meaning was clear. Higher. Institutional. The kind who built careers on secrets, not chalkboards. Sam stepped out of the office into a hallway that suddenly felt longer than it should. The floor seemed to shift beneath him. He walked in a fog, trying to keep his thoughts from spiraling. But as he turned the corner into the stairwell, someone rushed down the steps and nearly collided with him. "Oh, Sam." Maya Benton clutched a stack of books, cheeks flushed from the cold. She caught her breath and studied him. "Are you okay?" He shook his head. "Not even close." She hesitated, then pulled him aside into a quiet alcove near the west window. "I wasn't sure if I should tell you this," she whispered. "But something strange happened after you left yesterday. Professor Ellington wasn't the only one called to the dean's office. They pulled Pierce in too, and someone from compliance." Sam stiffened. "Why? Because she whispered the clip didn't just go viral. A group of alumni flagged it, and not the friendly kind, the ones who watch everything for risk. They want the university to investigate how a custodian accessed high-level academic spaces." He swallowed. "I was doing my job, I know," she said. "But they don't care about truth. They care about optics." She checked that no one was listening. "Sam, they think you were planted in that room." He stared at her, stunned. "Planted to embarrass the department, to expose incompetence, to undermine credibility." She exhaled shakily. "And they're asking who you're working with." For a moment, Sam felt lightheaded. The ground wasn't solid anymore. Nothing was solid anymore. He forced air into his lungs, gripping the railing behind him. "I need to pick up my daughter soon," he whispered. "I can't get pulled into this." "Then you need protection," Maya said urgently. "Someone who won't let them twist this. Someone in authority." "Who?" She hesitated. "Professor Ellington." Sam blinked. Margaret Maya nodded. "She's afraid of what the dean's office might decide. But she also knows what really happened. And if this turns into a tribunal, you don't want to stand alone." He didn't want to stand at all. He wanted to run. Leave this campus. Leave the scrutiny. Protect Emily. But the gears were turning now louder than before. He could feel it, a machine much bigger than him, grinding forward, ready to crush whoever fell beneath it. Maya touched his arm gently. "Talk to her. Before someone else talks first." Sam nodded faintly. But when he stepped outside into the icy air, a new message appeared on his phone. Unknown number. One sentence. "We need to discuss your past before someone else does." His heart stopped. Then the next message vibrated through his palm. "Tonight. 7. The bell tower steps. Alone." The bell tower loomed over campus like an older truth one that had watched generations rise and fall without ever blinking. By 7 in the evening, dusk had already swallowed the courtyard, leaving only the cold glow of the tower light stretching across the stone steps like pale fingers. Sam stood at the base, breath visible in the winter air, scanning the quiet shadows. Students rarely came here after dark. The place felt separated from the rest of campus, older, colder, private. Perfect for a meeting no one was meant to witness. He checked his phone again. No new messages, no clarification, just that single directive, bell tower steps. Alone. He wasn't sure why he obeyed it. Maybe because his insurance had been frozen by some unseen hand. Maybe because compliance seemed to know more about him than they should. Maybe because the viral clip had turned him into a question mark big enough for powerful people to investigate. Maybe because he was tired of running from a past he couldn't outrun forever. A soft footstep behind him tightened every muscle in his back. He turned quickly. A woman stepped from the shadow of the tower-structured coat hair, pulled into a neat twist posture, straight as a blade. Not Margaret. Not Maya. Someone older. Someone confident. Someone who didn't linger in hallways but moved through institutions like she owned them. "Mr. Harper," she said, her voice calm and deliberate. "Thank you for meeting me." Sam didn't recognize her. But something about her, the precision in her speech, the sharpness behind her eyes, told him she wasn't here by accident. "Who are you?" he asked. She stopped one step above him, giving her height and authority, without needing to raise her voice. "My name is Eleanor Rhodes. I serve on Westbridge's Board of Trustees." Sam felt the world tilt. Board of Trustees. The people who sat above the provost, above the dean, above every department. The ones who decided budgets, appointments, futures. "Why are you here?" he asked carefully. "Why call me because you've become a matter of interest?" she said. "And matters of interest reach my desk sooner than most." Wind cut sharply across the courtyard, carrying dry leaves past Sam's feet. He resisted the urge to shove his hands into his pockets. He didn't want to look small in front of her. What kind of interest, he asked? The kind that raises questions about competency in our faculty. Rhodes replied, "The kind that forces us to determine whether a viral clip reflects deeper structural issues." Sam exhaled slowly. So that was it. He was a symbol, not a person. "I wasn't trying to expose anyone," he said. "I was doing my job." And yet Rhodes replied, "Your presence in that classroom has implications far beyond wiping down chalk trays. Her gaze sharpened, slicing through the night. You demonstrated knowledge inconsistent with your documented background. That discrepancy demands clarity. The word clarity chilled him more than the cold wind. "I'm not being deceptive," Sam said. "I just didn't finish my degree." "Why?" Rhodes asked. The single syllable struck harder than accusation. Sam's jaw clenched. "Personal reasons." "Personal reasons don't erase aptitude," Rhodes replied. "Nor do they explain why a man with your instincts vanished from academia without a trace." Sam fought to keep his breath steady. "I didn't vanish. I left because I had to." "Had to," she repeated softly, as if tasting the shape of the truth he refused to say. "Mr. Harper, I have seen men with extraordinary potential bury themselves under ordinary jobs, usually because they fear the past chasing them." Her eyes locked onto his. "Are you afraid of something?" His throat tightened. He didn't answer. She didn't need him to. "The university is opening a formal review," Rhodes said. "Compliance will investigate how you were able to interpret advanced material so quickly. They will verify employment, history, academic history, and personal associations." He went cold. "My insurance was frozen because of that," Sam said. "My daughter needs medical tests. They said the hold won't lift until the university clears me." A flicker brief, but unmistakable crossed Rhodes's face. Not sympathy, calculation. "I did not order the hold," she said, "but I am aware of it." Sam took a step closer, his voice low and shaking. "She's 9. She has a heart condition. Her evaluations can't wait for bureaucratic reviews." Rhodes studied him in silence. Then quietly she said, "You should understand something, Mr. Harper. Institutions do not move quickly unless they have incentive. My daughter's health isn't incentive enough." "Not to a system," Rhodes replied, "but perhaps to the right individual." The implication stung. "What do you want from me?" he whispered. Rhodes stepped down from the stairs until she stood nearly eye to eye with him. "I want information." "Information about what? About who you were before you became a custodian?" Sam's heartbeat pounded in his ears. She waited. He said nothing. Eventually, Rhodes continued her tone, still controlled, but now edged with threat. "An unknown element on campus, particularly one with intellectual capability comparable to our faculty, will draw scrutiny. People will dig. People will make assumptions. Dangerous assumptions. And unless you give us a truthful account, someone else will write one for you." Sam's jaw tightened hard enough to hurt. "I'm not a threat." "Perhaps not," Rhodes said. "But ambiguity is." A long silence stretched between them as night deepened. The bell tower chimed softly. 7:15. A sound so gentle and profound that Sam suddenly felt the weight of every choice he'd made to protect Emily. He couldn't afford to lose his job. He couldn't afford to lose his insurance. He couldn't afford to become a public story. Rhodes watched him carefully. "Let me be candid," she said at last. "If the review finds irregularities, the university may terminate your employment. Without employment, your insurance lapses permanently." He felt his knees weaken, despite himself. However, Rhodes added, "If you cooperate, if you are transparent, I may be able to ensure leniency." The word tasted like poison. Leniency for what Sam asked bitterly. For knowing math, Rhodes didn't flinch. For not telling us who you used to be. The cold wind whipped sharply through the courtyard. Sam took a shaky breath. He could feel the weight of his past pressing against the door he had locked years ago. Emily in the hospital bed. Medical bills piled on the kitchen counter. the unfinished dissertation at Michigan, the night he had walked away from everything. Rhodes stepped back, pulling on her gloves. "You have until morning," she said. "Tell me the truth, or compliance will start digging for it themselves. And they are far less gracious than I am." She turned, descending the steps and disappearing into the dark. Sam stood, frozen breath clouding the air, his pulse thudding painfully. The cold settled deep in his bones. Not because of winter, because the life he'd built in silence was cracking open, and he no longer had the power to hold it shut. Behind him, the bell tower chimed again, each note echoing like a countdown. He didn't know whether the next day would destroy the job he needed, the anonymity he relied on, or the future he'd tried so hard to salvage. All he knew was this: the past he'd buried was clawing its way back. And if he didn't find a way to control it, someone else would. The campus was still asleep when Sam stepped off the bus the next morning. Frost clung to the grass like thin glass, crunching beneath his boots as he crossed the quad. The sky was a pale, bruised blue, the kind that arrives before sunrise, but refuses to promise warmth. He had not slept. Not after Rhodes's warning. Not after the hospital's call. Not after pacing the living room while Emily slept on the couch, her small chest rising and falling beneath a blanket, unaware that her father's world was beginning to splinter. He reached facilities just after 6, long before the rest of the staff arrived. The building smelled of detergent and industrial paint. The quiet was almost cruel. He'd come early to gather his thoughts, but the silence only made the pounding in his head louder. On his locker door, a yellow slip was taped at eye level. "See me, El Moreno." Sam pulled the note down with a sigh. He had at least hoped to start the day without another meeting. Lisa's office door was cracked open, warm light spilling across the floor. She sat behind her cluttered desk, arms folded tightly. Her expression wasn't angry, it was worried. "Close the door," she said. He obeyed, feeling dread pool in his stomach. Lisa slid a printed email across the desk. "I got this late last night." Sam scanned it quickly. His name appeared 3 times, highlighted in bold. Request for evaluation of role boundaries. Inquiry into conduct in restricted academic spaces. Temporary suspension of custodial access to Ellington Hall pending review. His throat tightened. What does this mean? "It means the university is investigating you," Lisa said, quietly. "Not just the classroom incident. Everything. I didn't do anything wrong. I know," she said. "But this is bigger than right and wrong." She leaned forward, lowering her voice. "This isn't how they usually handle things. Someone with pull pushed this through. Rhodes, or compliance, or both." "Am I being fired?" Sam asked. Lisa shook her head. "Not yet. But they're asking questions about your schedule, about where you go during shift, about whether you've been interacting with faculty and students outside the scope of your role." The phrasing made him recoil. "Interacting." "They're implying you overstepped," she said, "that you inserted yourself where you didn't belong." He felt the insult burn, but there was no place for pride. Not with Emily needing a cardiologist, not with his job hanging by a thread. Lisa softened. "Sam, you're one of the hardest working people we have. You keep your head down. You do your job. Whatever this is, it isn't coming from facilities. It's coming from higher up." The words landed like stones. He nodded, but his voice cracked when he spoke. "Thank you for telling me." She reached out, touching his arm. "I've seen people get swept into the administration's crosswinds before. Don't let them push you alone." Her kindness almost undid him. He didn't deserve it. Not when he was hiding so much. Not when telling the truth might risk everything. He stepped outside her office before his voice broke. The hallway spun. He braced himself against the wall, inhaling slow, steady breaths. He needed to move. To work. To feel normal for at least a moment. But when he reached his cart, a figure was waiting. Margaret. She stood at the end of the hallway, her posture tight, her hair pulled back severely. She wore a black wool coat gloves, still on as if she had rushed over the moment she heard something. Her eyes searched his face. "I heard," she said. 2 simple words, but loaded. About HR, about the inquiry. He avoided her gaze. "It's fine. It isn't," she said, sharply stepping closer. "Whatever this is, it's not a simple review. Someone is targeting you." "I'm staff," he muttered. "I'm easy to target." "You corrected my lecture," she replied. "Not a felony." Sam let out a hollow breath. "Apparently it's enough." Margaret hesitated. Her voice softened. "Sam, did you meet with someone last night?" His entire body stiffened. "Why do you ask?" She swallowed, the fine muscles in her jaw tightening. "Because a trustee requested my presence at 6:30 this morning. She asked about you, about Michigan, about whether you had ever audited graduate courses here." His pulse hammered. Rhodes was already moving against him. "What did you say?" "The truth," Margaret said. "That I don't know anything about your past. That your correction was impulsive, not premeditated." Then she added, "She didn't like that answer." Sam exhaled shakily. "They think I'm part of something." "They think you're someone," Margaret said bluntly. "Someone who shouldn't be invisible. Someone who shouldn't be scrubbing floors." Her tone turned cautious. "Sam, why does the board care about you? What aren't you telling me?" He couldn't answer. He saw Emily's pale face. He saw the unfinished dissertation pages locked in a box under his bed. He saw the life he abandoned the night everything broke. Margaret must have read something in his silence, because she stepped back with a look of startled realization. "You're not just a man who took some grad classes, are you?" "Please," he whispered. "Stop." "Sam, I can't talk about it." Her voice sharpened. "You need to." He shook his head, pushing the cart away from her. "I need to keep my job. I need to fix my insurance. That's it, that's all." She blocked his path, her expression fierce. "If you don't tell the truth, they will invent one." Her words echoed Rhodes's warning, and for a moment Sam felt trapped between 2 people demanding answers he could not safely give. "Leave it," he breathed. Margaret studied him long enough for the silence to crack into something painful. Finally, she stepped aside. "If you won't protect yourself," she said quietly, "someone else will have to." He didn't understand what she meant. Not then. Not until later. He pushed his cart through the corridor, heart pounding, fighting the urge to run and never stop. But before he reached the door, another voice called to him, low, hesitant, familiar. Dad Sam froze. Emily stood near the building entrance, bundled in her winter coat, her backpack hanging loosely from her shoulder. She shouldn't have been here. She should have been at school. He rushed to her, kneeling to her level. "Emmy, what are you doing here? Where's Mrs. Green?" She said. "You forgot to sign the permission slip," Emily murmured. "So I had to come back." Her cheeks were flushed from the cold, her breathing slightly shallow. Panic surged through him. "You shouldn't walk across campus alone." "I wasn't alone," she said. "A woman walked with me. She said she was a friend of yours." "A woman," Sam repeated slowly. "What woman?" Emily pointed behind her. A lone figure stood near the pathcoat collar, raised hands in her pockets, watching but not approaching. Rhodes. Sam stood up quickly, shielding Emily with his body. "Did she talk to you?" he asked. She asked if I liked math. Emily said. And if you teach me things at home. His stomach dropped. He lifted Emily into his arms, holding her close. Rhodes gave a small nod, whether a greeting or a threat, Sam couldn't tell, then turned and walked away, melting into the shadowed quad. Emily rested her head on Sam's shoulder. "Dad," she whispered, "am I in trouble?" He swallowed hard. "No, sweetheart, no. Not you." But as he carried her outside, nerve after nerve, firing like a warning system, he realized something with sickening clarity. Rhodes didn't just want information. She wanted leverage, and she had just found it. Sam kept walking long after Rhodes disappeared. Emily's small arms looped around his neck like an anchor he couldn't afford to lose. The winter air cut sharp against his face, but he barely felt it. His thoughts were too loud, too fast, tumbling over each other in a rising panic he couldn't let Emily see. He brought her to the childcare annex, where a kind, older receptionist rushed her inside without question, sensing something in Sam's face that didn't invite conversation. Once Emily was safely behind the glass doors, Sam leaned against the brick wall outside, pressing his palms into his eyes until stars burst behind them. She approached my daughter. He repeated it silently, each word a blow to the ribs. She approached my daughter. A trustee. A woman with power enough to destroy careers, to pull insurance records, to push HR into action. And she had looked at Emily like a puzzle piece she was willing to pocket. His phone vibrated in his coat. Unknown number. He considered ignoring it, but ignoring things hadn't worked out well lately. He answered. Harper. The voice was male, tired, older. He recognized it a moment later. Pierce. Professor Ronald Pierce, the man who had studied him like an anomaly in Whitmore's office. I need to see you, Pierce said. Now, I'm busy, Sam muttered. This isn't optional. Pierce's tone sharpened. I'm trying to help you whether you believe that or not. Come to the mathematics library, room 417. The call cut off. Sam closed his eyes. Another meeting. Another interrogation wrapped in academic politeness. But Pierce wasn't compliance. He wasn't a trustee. And he certainly wasn't a threat to Emily. Not directly. So Sam forced himself upright and started toward the library, his pace brisk, his hands, fists in his pockets. The mathematics library was nearly empty at this hour. Only 2 students sat hunched over laptops, and the lights hummed overhead with a low electrical drone. Room 417 was tucked in the back corner, small, lined with old number theory texts, its windows covered in frost. Pierce stood near the chalkboard, coat draped over a chair, sleeves rolled to the elbow. When Sam entered, Pierce didn't greet him. He didn't even turn. He pointed at the board. Solve this. Sam blinked. What Pierce turned, finally eyes, sharp, almost hungry. Solve it. On the board was a problem Sam hadn't seen in years, an asymptotic expansion challenge, elegant and brutal in its simplicity. No tricks, no traps, just mathematics in its purest form. A test of instinct, a test of identity. Why, Sam asked. Because I need to know, Pierce said. Not who you pretend to be. Not who you are on paper. Who you really are. Sam felt heat rising under his skin. I'm not a circus act. I'm not here to entertain your curiosity. No, Pierce said calmly. You're here because the university is circling you like wolves around an injured deer. And if you don't show your teeth soon, they will tear you apart. Sam froze. Pierce gestured at the board. So show them, or at least show me. Sam stared at the problem. Minutes passed. Slow, steady. He felt old gears turn in his mind, rusted from distance but still functional. This wasn't a trick from Rhodes, wasn't an ambush like Donnelly's questions. This was just math, the one place where truth didn't bend to politics. He stepped forward, reluctantly took the chalk and began to write. The board filled quickly with symbols, reflexive fluid lines sweeping into arcs and breaking into angle-sharp shifts. He forgot Pierce behind him, forgot the cold air, forgot the university waiting outside. The room shrank to nothing but numbers rearranging themselves into coherence. When he stepped back again, his hands trembled, not from fear, but from the familiar ache of something he had once loved as fiercely as breath. Pierce approached slowly, glasses slipping down his nose. He studied the board without speaking. Then he exhaled a long, low whistle. "Good God," he murmured. Whitmore suspected. "But this?" He turned to Sam. "You didn't take some graduate courses. You completed doctoral work." Sam looked away. "That's none of the university's business. It is now." Pierce circled him like a man pacing between revelation and regret. "You were a researcher, advanced, talented, and then you vanished. No record of a dissertation, no forwarding address, no conference mentions, nothing." Sam swallowed hard. "Life happens. This isn't life," Pierce said. "This is erasure." Sam tensed. Pierce softened slightly, something shifting in his expression. "I'm not your enemy. But you are in danger, Mr. Harper. Real danger. The trustees smell scandal. Compliance smells opportunity. And Ellington..." He hesitated. "Ellington smells something she can't name yet. But whatever it is, it scares her." Sam felt a twinge in his chest. "She's not scared of me." "She's scared for you," Pierce corrected quietly. "There's a difference." Sam blinked. What Pierce hesitated, then stepped closer. "She went to the dean this morning, tried to stop them from escalating the inquiry. She argued that the clip didn't reflect misconduct, that the classroom should never have been recorded under those circumstances, that you were being singled out." Sam stared. "She did what Pierce nodded. She put her reputation in play for you. And the dean didn't appreciate it. The floor seemed to tilt. Margaret had defended him and taken heat for it. Why would she do that? Sam whispered. Pierce studied him for a long moment. Because she recognizes brilliance. And because she sees what this machine will do to you if someone doesn't intervene. He walked to the window, wiping a small circle in the frost to peer outside. You need an ally. Someone with standing. Someone who isn't afraid to confront the trustees. I don't want to fight, Sam said. I just want my insurance reinstated. I want my daughter safe. Pierce nodded slowly. And that, he said, is why you're vulnerable. They can use your fear. Sam felt himself trembling again. What do I do? Pierce turned sharply, his voice suddenly cold and sharp as steel. You tell the truth. To the right person. Before it's used against you. Sam stepped back. I've spent years hiding that truth. And look where hiding has brought you. Pierce's tone cut cleanly, but without cruelty. If you don't speak, they will. And they will twist whatever they find. Sam sank into the nearest chair, burying his face in his hands. Pierce approached, lowering his voice. Tell Ellington, not me, not Whitmore, her. She already stepped into the line of fire for you. Sam shook his head. She won't understand. She doesn't need to understand, Pierce said. She needs the truth. Because the moment compliance calls her in for formal questioning, and they will, she must know what she's defending. The clock on the wall ticked loudly each second, measuring the time slipping through his fingers. Pierce gathered his coat. You can keep hiding and watch them dismantle your life. One benefit, one policy, one accusation at a time. He opened the door. Or you can finally step forward. He paused in the doorway. Rhodes will not give you until morning. That was a lie. She's already requested your full file. Sam's heart stopped. How do you know? Because she asked for mine last year, Pierce said. That's how I know exactly how she moves. He stepped into the dim hallway. Tell Ellington before Rhodes reaches her first. The door clicked shut behind him. Sam sat alone in the quiet room, the chalk dust still clinging to his fingertips, the truth clawing at his throat. Outside, the early morning sun finally began to rise, spreading a pale light across Westbridge like a warning. If he didn't tell Margaret who he really was, before someone else did everything he had left to protect, would shatter. Margaret Ellington's office door was half open when Sam reached it, the hallway dim except for a single pool of golden light spilling across the carpet. He stood there for a full 30 seconds, willing his pulse to slow, willing his voice not to shake, willing himself to cross the threshold of a truth he'd spent almost a decade burying. Before he could knock, he heard raised voices inside. Not shouting Westbridge faculty didn't shout, but tense, clipped, careful tones sharpened by fear. Margaret's voice came first. You cannot imply misconduct where there is none. I will not sign that statement. Another voice answered, a woman older, cool, every word calculated. Rhodes. It isn't an implication, Rhodes said. It is due diligence. A staff member inserted himself into an instructional environment and influenced academic discourse. The university requires documentation. Documentation is not the problem, Margaret shot back. Your phrasing is. A pause. You are crafting a narrative that demands guilt before determining whether any exists. I am crafting protection, Rhodes replied calmly. For the institution. Margaret's breath came out in a tight, angry exhale. And what about protecting people? Rhodes didn't answer. But Sam heard her steps first. Soft, confident, the shoes of someone accustomed to walking through consequences untouched. He stepped back instinctively as Rhodes exited the office, stopping short when she saw him. For the first time, her expression shifted, not surprise, but something close to satisfaction, as if she had expected him to arrive right then. Mr. Harper, she said smoothly. You're early. Margaret appeared behind her face, pale eyes sharp with something between warning and apology. Rhodes looked between them, then gave a small, ambiguous nod. I'll let the two of you speak privately. Just remember, time is not your ally. Then she disappeared down the hall like a shadow that had learned to walk. Margaret closed the door before Sam could change his mind and flee. For a moment, they simply stared at each other, the silence deep and tight enough to hold a lifetime of unasked questions. Finally, she spoke, her voice low. I assume you heard. Enough, Sam said. I know she wants a narrative. She wants a confession, Margaret corrected, or something she can twist into one. She crossed her arms, but it wasn't a defensive posture. It was bracing. Sam, whatever is happening, it's escalating. He nodded, his throat dry. Pierce said you defended me. She blinked, and something softened in her face. I didn't do it for you. Not exactly. I did it because the way they're handling this is wrong. Sam felt a small, almost painful knot of gratitude form in his chest. Thank you. Don't thank me, she said quickly. If they decide I'm obstructing, I may lose more than reputation. Why risk that? He asked quietly. Margaret hesitated. Because I know what it feels like to have your work, your life, reduced to a convenient explanation. Her fingers tightened on her sleeves. I won't let them do that to anyone else if I can stop it." The honesty in her tone shook him, but he didn't come to discuss roads or HR or the investigation. He knew exactly why he came. He stepped further into the office, closing the distance between them. "Margaret, there's something you need to know before this goes any further." Her breath caught. She gestured to a chair. "Sit." He did. She remained standing, as though she needed the height to armor herself against whatever he was about to say. Sam stared at the old oak desk, the stacks of papers, the framed awards, the chalk dust trailing from the board behind her. When he finally spoke, his voice carried the weight of 9 years. "I wasn't just a graduate student at Michigan. I was a doctoral candidate." Margaret didn't move. "I figured as much," she said softly. "Your intuition, it's not something you learn from textbooks alone." He swallowed. "I was 3 chapters into my dissertation. On what? Quantum graph invariants, topological models for irregular lattices." Her eyebrows lifted, but not with surprise. With recognition. "That's extremely advanced." "I know," he whispered. "I was good at it. Too good, maybe. My advisor used to say I saw structure the way other people see faces." Instinctively. Margaret's expression softened further, but she waited, sensing the fracture beneath his calm. "What happened, Sam?" He looked down at his hands, remembering the night the phone rang. The hospital, calling the doctor, explaining the defect in Emily's heart. "My daughter," he said quietly. "She was born with complications. The first surgery nearly broke her. The second wiped out everything we had. My wife couldn't handle the pressure. She left before Emily turned 1. Margaret's breath hitched, but she stayed silent. He continued. "I tried to keep up with research, teaching, clinic appointments, and working night shifts to cover the bills. But I couldn't be a father and a mathematician at the same time. So I dropped out." He forced a smile, one that hurt more than any truth he'd ever spoken. "I told myself it was temporary, that I'd come back when she was stable. But life doesn't pause for you to catch up." Margaret stepped closer, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why hide it? Because no one hires a janitor with a doctorate, half finished," he said. "Because I needed stable hours. Because I needed insurance. A job that didn't collapse if I couldn't come in for a day. Academia doesn't give you that. Not at the bottom." Margaret sank into the chair across from him, eyes fixed on him with a kind of quiet devastation. "And now," Sam said, "the past I buried is being dragged out by people who don't care why I left. They only care that I disappeared, and that I knew enough to embarrass a professor in front of a camera." She shook her head. "You didn't embarrass me." "Didn't I know?" she said, firm. "I embarrassed myself. You simply told the truth." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The fluorescent light above flickered, casting brief shadows across her face. She leaned forward, elbows on her knees. "Sam, you need to know what Rhodes is building. She's implying you gained unauthorized access, that you may have been collaborating with a disgruntled faculty member to discredit the math department." Sam stared at her, stunned. "That's insane." "It doesn't matter," Margaret said. "It only needs to sound plausible." "Why? Because the department is up for a multi-million-dollar endowment renewal. Any whiff of scandal gives the trustees leverage. And you, her voice, cracked. You're the perfect scapegoat. Invisible, unprotected, brilliant enough to be threatening but powerless enough to silence." Sam felt heat flood his face. Anger, fear, disbelief, all tangled into something raw and dangerous. So what now? She took a breath, steadying herself. Now she said, "You have to make a choice." "What choice?" "Whether to keep hiding or to let me defend the truth." His breath stilled. Why, you Margaret's eyes didn't waver. Because I started this. Because I mishandled that moment in the lecture hall. Because you trusted me with your silence, and that silence is killing you. She stood slowly crossing the room until she stood only inches from him. Tell me everything. All of it. Let me carry some of the weight. If I walk into that tribunal blind, they will tear you apart. He met her gaze, seeing no judgment there, only determination, and something like remorse. If you help me, he said quietly, they'll come after you too. They already are, she replied. So give me something worth fighting for. The words hung in the air between them, simple, sharp, and impossible to ignore. Sam exhaled, shoulders finally sinking, as if releasing years of tightly wound fear. He felt the door to his past creak open, and for the first time, he wasn't holding it shut alone. Outside the hallway, lights flickered on as the building woke for another day, unaware that in one quiet office, a truth buried under 9 years of silence was finally clawing its way into the light. Sam didn't speak for a long time. The quiet inside Margaret's office felt thick enough to hold him, as if the walls themselves were waiting for what came next. When he finally found his voice, it was rough, unguarded, a sound pulled from a place he had buried for years. There's more, he said. Margaret didn't flinch. She simply nodded once, steady and patient. Then tell me. He took a breath, then another, bracing against the memory that had shadowed every decision he'd made since leaving Michigan. When Emily was sick the first time he began, Michigan ran an internal audit on graduate stipends. They found irregularities. Not mine, my advisors. Research funds misallocated. Stipend promises broken. Students pushed into work they were never credited for. I confronted him. Quietly at first. But when my daughter's medical bills exploded, I couldn't stay quiet any longer. Margaret watched him with a stillness that wasn't cold. It was reverent, like she understood the gravity of every word. He told me to keep quiet if I wanted funding, Sam continued. Said I'd never finish without him. Said no one would believe a student over a tenured professor. His jaw clenched. He was right. Margaret closed her eyes briefly, absorbing the weight of that truth. Sam continued. I filed a report anyway. Nothing happened, except suddenly my teaching assignments vanished. My stipend was delayed, and the night Emily was rushed to the hospital, he emailed the dean claiming I'd fabricated data for my dissertation. Margaret's eyes flew open. Fabricated, Sam nodded. If that accusation stuck, I'd lose everything. Funding, degree, visa status if I'd had one. My entire future. His voice cracked. I didn't have the strength to fight. Not with Emily's heart failing. Not with my wife falling apart. So I withdrew. Completely. I left the program before the investigation could swallow me. Margaret circled behind her desk, hands gripping the back of her chair as if steadying herself. Sam, that's academic sabotage. That's criminal. It doesn't matter now. It's buried. But Rhodes won't see it that way, Margaret whispered. If she digs, she'll think you ran to hide wrongdoing. I know. He rubbed his face with both hands. That's why I never told anyone. Not until now. Margaret stepped around the desk, kneeling in front of him so they were eye to eye. You didn't run, she said firmly. You sacrificed a career to save your child, and you walked into a battle no student wins alone. Her voice softened, but not with pity, with resolve. If Rhodes tries to weaponize your past, I will fight her. He shook his head. You could lose your job. Let me be clear, she said, rising slowly. I would rather lose a title than let this institution destroy a man who deserves far better than what life has handed him." The room vibrated with a profound silence, two people standing on the edge of something larger than either of them. A knock shattered that stillness. Sam tensed. Margaret's shoulders stiffened. The door opened before she could speak. Deputy Provost Whitmore stepped inside, his expression tight, serious, carrying urgency like a second skin. "Margaret." "Sam, you need to come with me." Sam stood instinctively. "What happened?" "The trustees called an emergency session," Whitmore said. "Compliance is presenting findings, and Rhodes is leading the discussion. She's moving quickly." His voice lowered. "Too quickly." Margaret snatched her coat. "She's framing him." Whitmore nodded grimly. "She's trying." They moved through the hall together, footsteps echoing off stone walls. Students parted as the trio passed, sensing tension without knowing its cause. When they reached the administrative building, an assistant ushered them into a long conference room with a polished mahogany table stretching beneath dim pendant lights. At the far end, Rhodes stood with two compliance officers, papers spread in front of her, like evidence. She turned when they entered. "Perfect timing," Rhodes said smoothly. "We were just discussing Mr. Harper's unusual history." Sam felt Margaret tense beside him. Whitmore pulled out a chair for Sam, positioning himself between Rhodes and the narrative she was constructing. Rhodes gestured to her papers. "We've reviewed hospital records, employment files, academic transcripts. Mr. Harper's withdrawal from Michigan occurred during a misconduct review." A murmur spread across the room. Sam clenched his fists beneath the table. Rhodes continued. His sudden departure, lack of references, and disappearance from academic circles, present concerning inconsistencies. Margaret slammed her hand onto the table. "This is conjecture. Selective conjecture." Rhodes didn't look at her. "These facts warrant caution. A man with unclear credentials appearing in a graduate classroom correcting faculty—" "Enough!" Margaret snapped. "You will not build a case on half-truths," she turned to the board members. "You want the full story. Then hear it." Sam's breath caught as Margaret spoke, not carefully, not diplomatically, but fiercely, laying out the truth he'd shared with her only minutes ago. Every detail, every sacrifice, every injustice, every loss. She kept nothing hidden, but neither did she turn him into a martyr. She presented him as a father crushed by circumstance, a scholar forced into silence, a man clawing to keep his daughter alive while the system he trusted failed him. When she finished, the room was silent. Whitmore stepped forward. "I move that the compliance review be paused, immediately, pending full context verification." Rhodes stiffened. "Context does not erase. Context defines everything," Whitmore said sharply. "And unless you wish to punish a man for circumstances beyond his control, you will halt your inquiry until we determine whether Michigan wrongfully coerced his withdrawal." A senior trustee spoke for the first time. "If this is true, Westbridge has a duty to protect him, and perhaps to offer restitution." Rhodes's expression darkened, but she said nothing. The board murmured among themselves. Then the chairperson raised her hand, motioned to pause the investigation and restore all employment benefits, including insurance, effective immediately. Hands rose around the table, one by one, without hesitation, all except Rhodes. She stood, rigid, defeated the structure she'd built, collapsing beneath her. "The motion passes," the chairperson said. A wave of relief washed through Sam, so strong his knees nearly buckled. Emily's tests, her coverage, her future, it was coming back to him. Margaret placed a firm hand on his arm, not for support, but solidarity. Rhodes collected her papers with icy precision, but before leaving, she paused near Sam. Her voice was quiet, but laced with something dangerous. "This isn't over, Mr. Harper. Silence has consequences. Truth even more so." Margaret stepped protectively between them, and intimidation has limits. Remember that. Rhodes left the room without another word. The board dispersed. Whitmore gave Sam a small nod, the closest thing to reassurance he could offer in a formal setting. Soon only Sam and Margaret remained. She turned to him with a faint, relieved smile. "You're safe. For now." Sam exhaled, the breath trembling out of him. "Thank you. I don't know how to repay you." "You don't owe me anything," she replied. "But you do owe yourself something. A future. And maybe a return to the person you were meant to become." They walked out together into the crisp evening air, the campus lights glowing softly across the quad. Sam paused, looking up at the bell tower, no longer a threat, but a landmark marking the turning of a chapter he thought he'd never reopen. Margaret looked at him, her voice warm, steady. "Whatever comes next, Sam, you won." He didn't feel triumphant. He felt grateful, alive, and finally visible. If this story speaks to your heart, tap like, hit subscribe, and share your thoughts with 3 simple words in the comments. I found hope.